Hello and welcome to the polling station with Johnny Ward and William Kedjanyi. Unlike on a certain rival firm, if you have backed Joe Biden to be the next president, you have been paid out by Star Sports, William. He pretty much is the president, but Big Don is still just kind of still holding on in there in the White House.
He is, yes. And amazingly, the presidential transition is actually happening. Emily Murphy, who is the administrator of the General Services Authority, basically sort of the movers that hand over the government from one party to another, one president to another, I should say, she has ascertained that Joe Biden is the president-elect. Biden is receiving intelligence briefings now. There's actually cooperation with the Trump White House, which is amazing, absolutely amazing. But no, he will be our next president, come hell or high water. So if you really don't like Trump, and there's plenty of people out there who do, judged by my Twitter feed and judged by plenty of the correspondence I get, the nightmare is over. Just one thing, we are waiting, I think, still to pay out our vote share. That's not through us trying to be stingy or anything. We have a lot of votes still to count. Plenty of them, I think, in New York still. So we will try to wait to the very last moment because vote share could be impacted by incoming ballots, as I'm sure everybody knows by now.
Yeah, you mentioned Twitter. We'll get to a few Q&As later on that you got from your Twitter correspondences, but it's an exciting day for you, William. If there's one thing you love, it's a spending review, and it's an interesting day and time indeed for Rishi Sunak, who is 2-1 to be the next leader of the Conservatives, and obviously second favourite to be the next PM into the bargain.
Yeah, big day for Rishi Sunak. His spending review, by the way, was it was well known relatively. We knew that foreign aid would go from 0.7 of the national budget to 0.5. We knew that the numbers looked pretty grim, as you'd expect when all the shops and the pubs and the restaurants are closed for months on end. The key, really, from a political betting viewpoint, is how does Sunak navigate the next 12 months, which will surely be the most difficult, because he has this to deal with and he has Brexit to deal with. And with Brexit, we don't yet know if there will be a deal or not. And we don't know how wide-ranging that deal will be. So he's the current favourite, as said previously, to be the next Tory party leader and the next Prime Minister. I wouldn't disagree with that position, but I think that this is the hard part for him. And he's going to have, I think, a hell of a job on keeping his political position at the same standing. Because, as an example, Gordon Brown, right, he got massively hit by the financial crisis as an example. And generally speaking, much easier to be everybody's friend when you're giving money. When you're raising taxes, it's much harder.
Yeah, I'm actually just reading Lionel Barber's book, the ex-FT editor, and right now he's just after where I'm in chapter 3. He's just after meeting Gordon Brown, and everything is grand, but I just get a feeling things might get a little bit tricky. Will they get tricky for Boris Johnson, who probably spent part of today wishing Dominic Cummings, his former ally, happy birthday? He's 49 today, but there are still obviously prices on when the big man is going to leave. 2021 is a 12-1 shot, 11-8 next year. It's going to be a seminal year with Brexit, obviously, and the fallout from COVID. 2022, 11-2, 2023, 7s. And if Boris can hold on to 2024 or later, you get paid out at 13-8 with Star Sports.
Yeah, so Boris is in for a tricky year, I'd have said, in 2021. I mean, this year has been incredibly challenging for him. I think we have to remember he's had his own battle with coronavirus, but most people, I think a majority of voters, even if that majority is less now than it was at the high point, think that the government hasn't done a great job on handling coronavirus. What's really important for him next year, two things: Brexit and the vaccine rollout. If the government can get some sort of Brexit deal and navigate the really tricky part, which will probably be the changeover, so 31st December to 1st January, and the coming weeks, therefore, without too much damage, and then a vaccine can be rolled out and you'd have large parts of the population vaccinated or immunised by, let's say, summer, then you'd imagine they'd get some credit from the public for that. That has been the case in the past, right? And a rolling back of restrictions has seen a bit of an uptick in government support. The vaccine news has seen a bit of an uptick in government support. It's not too hard to imagine if life returned to normal, and I'm not saying it would, but if life began to return to something different than this, then the government would receive credit. But on the other hand, if that vaccine rollout goes wrong, and we have to remember this is a government that, furlough aside, I think most people don't rate their handling in a pandemic, then there could be hell to pay, and real hell to pay. So Boris Johnson to go next year would seem to be the year if he was going to go before 2024 at all. But that said, the polls are neck and neck, but I don't think anybody in the Tory party is getting exceptionally worried. These are backbench revolts that are taking place over tiers being in counties or cities, or foreign aid, or a cost-benefit analysis of lockdown. But that said, he has got a big enough majority, I think, just about to handle it.
Of course, it is Safer Gambling Week, and it's final day today. Star Sports would just like to mention that. And also, if you want to find out some more, it's at the bottom of our screen now for some information on Safer Gambling Week. We do have some Q&A questions coming in from your Twitter feed, William, and a couple of interesting ones this week.
Yeah, indeed. First question from Andrew McCarran. Really interesting one, this, which is simply, is political betting going into hibernation? Now, the short answer is no, it's not. The long answer is there are plenty of new markets to fill the high from the presidential election.
Politics never sleeps and political betting never sleeps.
Absolutely. We don't sleep here. We will have some new markets for British politics coming out in the next few days. Anti-post political betting is growing anyway. You know, people are already making moves in the 2024 market, and with good reason, there's value there. Next year will be quite a big one domestically. We're already betting on the London mayoral election. We're already betting on the Holyrood election. I imagine there'll be moves in the independence market, which is an anti-post market that's seeing a decent amount of interest. And then also there's mayoral elections in May. If all goes well, I'd imagine that will be quite hotly contested. So lots still to come, and an increased amount of anti-post activity is the outlook ahead.
What else have we got?
So Stephen, who is a friend of the podcast, he's just simply asked, how long do we see Keir lasting? Now, Keir Starmer's position as leader of the Labour Party is more secure in terms of internal party power, but generally speaking, the look to the outside is worse because of the HRC report, but not really that, the fallout from it. The fallout because of Boris Johnson, sorry, not Boris Johnson.
Corbyn. Even with Corbyn not there, he's casting a shadow.
I know. I know. I fall into the poster's brain of never being able to think about anything but Jeremy Corbyn. But in all seriousness, his suspension and then readmission into the party and suspension of the whip leaves Starmer sort of horribly pulled apart in the sense that he kicked him out of the party. Well, he didn't kick him out, but many people say he had an influence in the decision, and I wouldn't be too against that view. But he's also in. So it's like a Hotel California situation. You know, he can check out, but he can never leave.
9-4 to succeed Boris.
I would have said that's probably more the right price. He was really short earlier in the summer. He was getting to 6-4, which I thought was a rank price. 9-4 seems fair to me. I think there'll be changes in that market again, by the way. But for Starmer, the issue here is a public image one, because a big part of the whole idea of Starmer's time at the top of Labour is meant to be that even though he's a very sort of broad technocrat, right, he's meant to make the party look good and meant to make people answer more positively when they think of Labour as a party ready for government or whatever. But you can't just say, I'm not Jeremy Corbyn for 4 years. It can't just be, would you look, he's gone. At some point, Starmer will need to define what his outlook for power is. I think he's got time, by the way. I think he's got time. I don't think he needs to go particularly rushing in. But at some point in the next year, he'll have to define that sort of policy outlook and that vision. And I think that will be a really big moment for him. And
we have one final one.
We do. It's from Will Tucker. He's saying he's seen polling for the London mayoral elections, anything for Greater Manchester, etc. The answer to that is not yet, but I'd expect we'd have odds on those mayoral races. and I'd expect we have polling at some point in 2021. My feeling is that the incumbents look set to do okay, but I think what happens in terms of the coronavirus vaccines rollouts and Brexit will have a really big impact from area to area, and I think that might be the defining factor.
Thanks very much, William.
Pleasure to be with you as always.
Yeah, that was the polling station, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Can't wait for it.